Topaz is coming, and she brings some massive new changes to the game, and the stonks for some existing characters are going to start rising. She is a character that has a huge focus on the follow-up attack mechanic, a mechanic where a character attacks outside of their regular turn. So for example, characters like March 7th and Himiko. Topaz is a fire hunt character with also some nihility type vibes, because she applies a debuff that increases the follow-up attack damage that enemies receive. Now, she might be bringing about a new playstyle in Honkai Star Rail, but that's not the main reason why I and many other people will be pulling for her. She has tons of cool assets that she brings to the table, and of course, that adorable little Warp Trotter Numby walks around with her while she's on the map. Anyway, let's get into the details about what Topaz and Numby will bring to Honkai Star Rail. Topaz's kit revolves around the Proof of Debt debuff, and also summoning Numby to launch follow-up attacks as much as possible. I'll break down her kit starting with her skill, which explains the Proof of Debt debuff, and then her talent, which explains what Numby does, and then I'll finish off the rest of her kit. So the skill. Difficulty Paying inflicts Proof of Debt. This will increase the damage taken from follow-up attacks. This debuff only applies to the most recent target that it is applied to, meaning you can only apply this debuff to one enemy at a time in a battle, and it will be applied to whichever enemy you target with your skill. And then if there are no enemies on the field with Proof of Debt when an ally's turn starts, or when an ally takes action, Topaz will inflict it onto a random enemy. What this basically means is that on turn 1 of a battle, Proof of Debt will be automatically applied even if Topaz doesn't go first. And this is not an attack, it is just going to apply automatically. Also, this skill includes the clause, or when an ally takes action. They must have added this little bit of text to include attacks that come from the extra turn mechanic, since those aren't actually considered real turns in the game. So when a character gets an extra turn, that extra turn has the ability to apply the Proof of Debt debuff onto the enemy. Overall, this just means that Proof of Debt is always going to be active regardless if you use the skill. So this basically means that you don't have to reapply the debuff by spending a skill point. Then in terms of damage, it actually deals 150% of Topaz's attack to the target. Using the skill to deal damage is also considered a follow-up attack, and this has implications on what types of buffs will increase this skill's damage. Whether or not this skill is considered both a skill and a follow-up attack needs some further testing, but if it does not, then things like the Fire Set's 4-piece bonus effect won't give this ability any extra damage bonus. The energy generation and weakness break on this ability is normal, regenerating 30 energy and dealing 60 points of weakness break, which is double of a normal basic attack. And then one last thing to note is that Proof of Debt status will be applied before damage calculation, so this means that upon launching the skill, it will also get its own damage boost from the Proof of Debt effect. And at level 10, you get a 50% damage boost on follow-up attacks. Overall, this is a very interesting skill that combines Nihility and Hunt, and is a completely new mechanic that changes the properties of a skill into a follow-up attack. Now let's go ahead and move on to her talent. Her talent is what allows Numby to take part in battle. Numby is going to have 80 base speed, which is quite slow compared to normal characters because we're usually around the 95 to 110 base speed range, but there are plenty of ways to advance Numby's action forward so that they can launch follow-up attacks quite regularly. And as I just mentioned, all of Numby's attacks are considered follow-up attacks, and they will attack a single enemy that has the Proof of Debt status on them. This is going to deal fire damage equal to 150% of Topaz's attack. And do note that all of these scalings, when I do mention them, are at talent level 10. Also, when enemies with Proof of Debt are hit by an ally's follow-up attack, Numby's action is advanced forward by 50%. This talent also has the clause that Numby cannot advance their action forward during their own turn, and this is because technically Numby themselves is an ally, So this just means that they don't advance their own action forward when they hit the enemy. Then, as with most other abilities, if Topaz is knocked down, then Numby will disappear. So basically, in order to fully utilize this talent, you want to be using as many follow-up attacks on your team as possible to advance Numby's action forward as many times as possible. This way you can launch as many follow-up attacks as you can with that extra 50% damage boost from the Proof of Debt status effect. And we'll get into team synergies later on in the video. But after hearing how this talent works, you should start to cook some ideas in your head on what characters would work well with Topaz. And now Topaz's ultimate, Turn a Profit, is a 130 cost ultimate, so it is a bit higher than the 120 average. The ultimate is also an enhanced type ultimate that doesn't deal any direct damage to the enemy. What this does is that Numby enters a special Windfall Bonanza state. It will increase the damage multiplier of Numby by 150% and crit damage by 25%. As I mentioned earlier in the talent, whenever Numby launches a follow-up attack, they deal 150% of Topaz's attack. So this basically doubles Numby's attack, and a little bit more because of the extra crit damage. Then, if an enemy with Proof of Debt is attacked by a basic attack, skill, or ultimate from any teammate, then Numby's action gets advanced forward. All of this advancing forward for Numby basically makes up for their base 80 speed to get those attacks out much more frequently. The enhanced state is over after 2 attacks from Numby. And so take note that the ultimate now covers the rest of the different types of attacks in the game: basic attack, skill, and ultimate, whereas her talent only advanced forward with follow-up attacks. So basically the ultimate covers the rest of the gaps. Topaz's technique, Explicit Subsidy, is an absolutely loaded one. It affects the battle, the overworld, and the simulated universe. So firstly, the technique is an enhanced type technique, which means that you can use it and then swap to another character. It is going to regenerate 60 energy for Topaz after Numby's first attack. This can be anything, so that means you can use a skill, or it could be Numby's follow-up attack. This allows her to get an ultimate on turn 1 of the Memory of Chaos, starting with half of your energy, which is 75, 30 from the skill, and then 60 from the technique, puts us at well above the 130 energy. And then of course, if you want to conserve the skill points, you can just use a basic attack, and then Numby will take action a bit later in the cycle, but you should still be able to use your ult within the first cycle. And then in the overworld, it will summon Numby, who will search out basic treasures and also other warp trotters on the map within a certain radius. And also after defeating overworld enemies, you'll be awarded extra credits up to 10,000 per day. Now, how much extra credits you get after each battle is yet to be seen, but from the footage we've seen so far, it was about 700, but this could also just depend on how much credits that you gained during that battle, so it could be some kind of percentage. And then lastly, in the simulated universe, after defeating enemies, you'll get a small extra amount of cosmic fragments and also a chance to receive a random curio. Whether these are limited to only positive curios is also yet to be confirmed, but hopefully it is only positive curios. And now moving on to Topaz's major traces. Her first one is Stonks Market. Yeah, Hoyo is really leaning into the memes with Topaz's character design. I absolutely love it. So, after Numby attacks while in the enhanced state from the ultimate, Topaz regens 10 energy. Something that I did not mention earlier is that when Topaz launches their follow-up attacks, it does not regen Topaz's energy like most other follow-up attacks in the game. This is presumably since Numby appears as a separate entity on the action order list. So let me know down in the comments what you think, because I'm unsure of how Jing Yuan's follow-up attack works, since Lightning Lord is also a separate entity, and I don't recall whether or not he regens energy whenever the Lightning Lord attacks. But in any case, this trace fills in that gap and allows Topaz to regen 10 energy when Numby attacks, kind of like other follow-up attacks. However, it only triggers when Numby is in the enhanced state by the ultimate. Her next trace is Financial Turmoil, and it increases Topaz and Numby's damage dealt to enemies with fire weakness by 15%. Very simple trace that gives us some extra damage. The final major trace is Overdraft. When Topaz uses a basic attack to deal damage, it will be considered a follow-up attack. Some implications on this: basically any effects that boost follow-up attack damage will increase the damage of her basic attack. Things like the simulated universe elation path buffs, or also her own Proof of Debt state. Now, just like the skill, whether this overrides the property of it being a basic attack needs to be tested. So basically, is Topaz's basic attack considered both a basic attack and a follow-up attack? That's what we need to find out. Topaz's basic attack also just helps advance Numby's action forward without the need to spend any skill points. And then Topaz's minor traces, 22.4% extra fire damage, 12% extra crit rate, and 10% extra HP. Now let's get into some of her relic builds. And the thing about Topaz's relic builds is that they are in a bit of a weird state right now because, as mentioned earlier, it's unclear whether her abilities are only considered follow-up attacks or if they still retain their original properties in addition to being considered a follow-up attack. If her abilities become strictly follow-up attacks, then sets like the fire set lose some of their value, since that relic set increases the wearer's skill damage by 12%. Otherwise, everything else works just fine. A flat extra 10% fire damage, and then after unleashing an ultimate, increases the wearer's next fire damage by 12%. So even without that extra skill damage, Topaz still does get 22% extra damage bonus in general. Other relic builds to consider is to mix the fire set with the hacker space set for some extra speed to hit certain speed breakpoints, or the musketeer set for some extra attack percentage. Now, there will also be a new relic set coming that increases follow-up attack damage that will work pretty nicely for her. For planar ornament sets, the inert Salsodo is the best to unilaterally increase her follow-up attack damage as long as she hits that 50% crit rate. The extra ultimate damage bonus is unapplicable since her ultimate is an enhanced type ultimate. And then as a secondary choice, the Space Sealing Station can work for the extra attack percentage. And then in terms of main stats you want to be looking for, running a typical hyper carry set works best. Crit damage or crit rate depending on your substats for the body, speed boots or attack depending on your substats, and if you decide to run Asta or not. If you were running Asta, you can probably go with attack boots, fire damage bonus, and attack percentage on the sphere and link rope. Now for the light cones that don't come from a limited banner, barring her signature light cone is, well, obviously her signature light cone. It is an absolutely amazing light cone that not only benefits herself, but the entire team. This light cone provides an extra crit rate of 18% and also follow-up attack damage by 30%. This means that Topaz is basically getting an 80% damage boost to all of her follow-up attacks. That's pretty crazy, in my opinion. Then it will also apply a debuff called the Tame State that increases the crit damage of everyone on the team who attack that enemy with that debuff. The stacks also do not expire, and they stack up to 2 times, giving a total of extra 24% crit damage. Overall, just a really solid light cone. The Herder Shop light cone is great. It gives a ton of extra crit rate and also has some good base stats that are better than 4 stars. Just make sure that Topaz is the main damage dealer, so she's not competing for kills to activate the extra 40% attack bonus. The 4-star light cone sword play at S5 is very strong. An extra damage bonus at full power is incredibly easy to achieve with Topaz and Numby because her attacks are actually multi-hits, and each hit will increase the stack by 1. At S5, it is an extra 80% damage boost once you hit all stacks. And then we have some niche light cones like the Battle Pass light cone that can work if you need a buff dispeller. It has a chance to trigger on each hit of her attack, so it is quite likely to dispel 1 buff on the enemy after Numby attacks. And now let's move on to team synergies. This should be obvious as you are watching this video and cooking up some teams, but any character that has a follow-up attack in their kit synergizes with Topaz. Some more so than others due to the frequency in which they trigger their follow-up attacks. This basically allows Numby to take more actions, and each follow-up attack also gets that big damage boost, 50% at talent level 10. So far right now, Clara seems to be Topaz's strongest teammate because she can easily fire off 2 follow-up attacks that have very high damage multipliers. March has a similar frequency of firing off follow-up attacks, but her damage output is not the strongest. Himeko can also work well, however, mostly just against matchups weak to fire, or if you bring the proper elements to trigger weakness break as fast as possible. And then of course, Jingyuan as well. And then there's also Kafka and Blade who have follow-up attacks, but again, Kafka's is not particularly strong, and then also Blade's takes 5 stacks of his charge mechanic, so it's not as fast as the other characters that I mentioned, like Clara and March. Doesn't mean that these characters can't work. There can be niche scenarios where they work, such as if you need the weakness type for the matchup. Then for some general support, Asta is an amazing teammate because she boosts fire damage with one of her traces and can run the Lightcone that provides extra fire damage. Planetary Rendezvous. Also, Tingyun, like always, can accelerate her ultimate for more stronger Numby bonks. So depending on which teammates you pick for Topaz, it's definitely going to affect how you build her relics. A team that utilizes a lot of follow-up attacks, you can get away with less speed on Topaz because her teammates can accelerate Numby as well. But if you're using a Topaz with only Topaz as the follow-up attacker, you want more speed so that her basic attacks and skills can advance Numby's actions. Of course, the ultimate can allow teammates to advance Numby's actions as well, but it is of course locked by an ultimate, which is not always available. So in that case, you may want to use a character like Tingyun to accelerate Topaz's ultimate. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I don't usually ask for subs or to help me with the algorithm, but if you leave a comment and just interact with the video, share it out, it will definitely help out the channel and I will appreciate it very much. Till next time, I will see you guys later, and keep an eye out for more Topaz videos.